This is Tuesdays with Artificial Intelligence, with your host, Peter Ward.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Tuesdays with AI. I'm actually in New York City, and it's pretty bad. Yesterday was 85 degrees. Carl, where are you located? Up in north of the border?
Yeah, I'm in Montreal. It's nice and warm here as well, Peter.
Okay, fantastic. We've got a great guest, Alex Harrison in Nebraska. Now, you were telling me earlier you had a bit of bad weather, didn't you? You're saying.
Yeah, they were calling for 2 to 4 inches of hail at one point, which was interesting. Luckily, where we live, missed all that. But yeah, we're a little bit on the cooler side now. We're about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. We were rolling in the 80s for a while, but I think towards the end of the week, it's supposed to pick back up again. But yeah, cooled off a little bit for right now.
How cold does it actually get where you are in the depths of the winter?
It depends. We've had like negative 20 before, I think, Fahrenheit, and it just kind of depends. They're usually like 1 or 2 day kind of events if it gets that cold, but yeah, it just ebbs and flows. We have both the high highs and the lows.
Well, New York does get the extreme. Okay, and of course, because New York is like the media capital of North America, the news will report on it like you know, very picturesque. Like in Canada, Carl, I'm assuming with you, it's all like. Does it start snowing in like October or something?
The thing growing up was praying that it didn't snow on us when we had our trick-or-treating for Halloween. That was usually by November it's starting, but sometimes as early as October for sure.
Right. Okay. All right then. So Alex, you're talking about the models with Microsoft Foundry. So let's just, before we sort of do a bit of a deeper dive in this, just tell the audience what exactly are the models and what exactly is Microsoft Foundry?
Yeah, so Microsoft Foundry is kind of Microsoft's play into model management. It's a way for you to host and deploy different AI models. What I mean by models is both small and large language models. So you think of like your typical ones that are getting all the news cycle right now is your ChatGPTs, your Anthropics, your Gemini. Those are large language models. They're a bunch of basically just data sets trained to try to predict what the next thing is that you're going to say or want to hear. Microsoft has some of their own models, but they've also tried to position themselves to be the host of all these models, right? So no matter who you want to use, they've kind of put a bunch of partnerships out there. They had Meta. They've recently got Anthropic. There's even ways to host some of your keys for Gemini through there so that as well as Hugging Face partnerships, right? So you can have your open source models that are trained and built by the community as well if you want to bring them in.
Okay,
but yeah.
This is quite a different strategy to perhaps what Google's doing, isn't it? Correct. Okay, so and it's actually it's one of these things. It's like it's you talk about think different here, but it's like a very different. And is it sort of like maybe it's a little bit of the sense that like. At the moment, Claude is flavor of the month. Last year, it was ChatGPT. So it's almost a bit like Microsoft saying, whatever's flavor of the month, we can accommodate it, basically.
Yeah, I think they're positioning themselves more as the marketplace. So they're a one-stop shop where you can come and get whatever the flavor of the month is. Pick your ice cream flavor, right? For that example of maybe today's hotness is Google's Gemini, and you want to have that ice cream scoop, but maybe Anthropic comes with another one. If you go the more model provider route, right, you have an enterprise contract with Anthropic. Well, if you want to change to Google, that's a lot of paperwork. That's a lot of legal. That's a lot of shifting. You guys have probably worked through where you have to shift keys and change people over. And then we'll make sure you don't use the old thing. And then somebody uses it past the date and it doesn't work anymore. And some executive gets upset or something. Where this way, kind of behind the scenes, you can have one key and then just easily sub out different models. And you can let people... if you want to go the full self-service route, let people go and try different models, evaluate different tasks against different models, and have the true liberties of maybe Gemini is really great in these use cases here, and maybe Anthropic's really great here, or maybe we found this one off-the-shelf small language model that really excels in, we can host it on-prem. We don't have to pay for it. Right. You kind of get the best of all those worlds using that.
Because you're talking about like on the marketplace. I saw a good analogy I got is that instead of them trying to like win the AI race, instead of them trying to create the fastest horse, they're basically trying to own the race, hot track, the betting system, and the finishing line. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too.
Okay, and basically OpenAI, Anthropic, and open source, they're the horses. Okay, or and like the marketplace creates the guidelines, the compliance, and the user, the consumption experience in many ways.
Yeah, I think it's more than a marketplace though, right? It's like a full-on platform, right? Anything from like your governance or your your workflows and your tooling and your logging. There's a lot of tools in there to work with that. And I think we say, hey, you get to pick your own LLM, but you can also pick your own LLMs, right? You can even have multiple working in a solution, right? You're not just stuck to one within Foundry, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they definitely get you in with the variety, and then you have that depth of actually supporting and operating models too. Like organizationally, you can put out different keys for like token per minute quotas. So if I have one team over here and one team over here, I can put different token quotas on them as well, so that their key basically gets shut off if they try to use it too much. You can do different, logging and metrics, so you can have your explainability. You can even do evaluations like red teaming. You can have some content safety protection in there, so like jailbreaking or all that. I don't know if you guys saw I think it was a Chevy dealership back in the day where somebody was talking with a chat bot and basically got the bot to say that they would sell a fully loaded vehicle for $1. This is a legally binding agreement. No givesies, backsies. Like that's an example of prompt injection, right?
I didn't
Air Canada.
I like it, yeah, but yes.
Yeah, Air Canada had something similar too, right? Where there was a patron who had a reason why they couldn't make their flight. The AI agent said basically, yeah, you'll get a refund because you met this thing and it totally hallucinated. Well, they ended up taking it to court, and the court ruled that the AI bot gave her wrong information. So that person was entitled to a refund. It gives you some of those metrics and observability, so you can kind of watch and evaluate and make sure that those things aren't happening. And then there's safeguards in place too to potentially shut it off in case you're getting any sort of it's called groundedness. Basically, how anchored are you into the data you give it? If you want to augment it with your own data, you could shut it off if it gets way too far off the reservation or like is trying to speak or make up stuff, and then be alerted when that happens as well.
Okay, so what we're talking about is like basically we can swap out the LMN, like the engine here. Okay, how easy is it to swap out to say go from ChatGPT into Claude? Like, and the reason where I'm going here is that like users have got all their that tribal knowledge trained on the user in Claude, and then suddenly it's going to have to go into ChatGPT. Like, how does it take that into account?
Yeah, so when you call something in Microsoft Foundry, you supply it the Foundry URL, you supply it an API key, and then you supply it a deployment name. So the deployment name, when you make a deployment of an LLM, is like a one-to-one. So you can call it whatever you want, but you can think of it as like, so that third parameter of deployment name could be a ChatGPT model. It could be an Anthropic model. Thanks to OpenAI and a lot of the SDK creators, essentially, there's what's called the OpenAI specification for LLMs. So it's basically kind of an agreed upon data structure that they will use basically to do requests with each other. So it's pretty simple to plug and play, especially the big name providers of, hey, I want to use ChatGPT now, or maybe now I want to use an Anthropic model. They both adhere to the same data structures when you make your request. So it's just changing out the deployment name. In Foundry, you can deploy as many serverless models as you want, right? You only pay if you use them. And there's a pretty big catalog. I think it's like 80 or 90 different models. So once you have your quota basically up there, and it's just a matter of changing the name and changing that third parameter, whether it's your SDK, or you can use just plain REST calls or curl commands. So that's how easy it is to switch it out. So you just pass your message, say, hey, I'm calling Anthropic now, or hey, I want to call this one now. And then you can even do the sub deployments, right? So like ChatGPT, I think they're on 5.4 now. I could be wrong. You could call Codex, you can call the normal ChatGPT, you could call the mini models, nano models, whatever, so on and so forth, or different sonnet models, different, and all those come with different pricing structures, right? So you might have different reasons for the other ones. The other thing that they provide too is there's something called a model router. So I don't know if you've used Copilot chat before in like VS Code. There's the auto feature and you get a discount.
Yeah.
There is a model router actually in Foundry you can use that will try to route your requests to the most appropriate model. That way, I try to make the joke of, everybody wants to use the latest and greatest model, but you don't always need a Ferrari when all you need is a skateboard. And, the price difference is very extreme there.
well, that's very true. And practicality as well. Like a Ferrari going to the supermarket ain't particularly that useful. Okay. However, a Ferrari going on the first date is actually very helpful, actually. It's you kind of like saying, well, AI is almost like becoming like electricity. Like nobody asks for the best electron, is asking like, how easy can I flick the switch? Okay. Now, with that being said, like do the compliant, like the moment you're going to flick the switch, I'm assuming obviously the compliance folks and security folks are going to sort of like start raising their hands saying, wait a minute here, guys, we've just done a whole sort of like compliance and audit on these. So do we need to start from scratch, or can it be just like slot straight into the company compliance and guidelines?
Yeah, there's some high level data compliance and data sovereignty requirements that come with your enterprise agreement that Microsoft Foundry adheres to. So I think some of the model providers have slightly different ones if you're very particular about that. But I would say at a high level, your data doesn't go back to the model trainers, right? So it stays your data. It stays isolated in your Microsoft tenant. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not used to retrain models. It's not shared with those customers. So I'd say at a high level, that's kind of the shtick they have, is like you're in Azure, you have your normal data security, data privacy. And then there's some differences with the models sometimes, but most of them kind of adhere to the same ones of like, here's what we have our data privacy at, here's what we do. And all of that is subservient to the Microsoft data privacy policy. So, when ChatGPT, Anthropic, all of those kind of want to change their policies, a lot of those are still, Microsoft will still protect your data. It won't let it go out to other third parties, just in general.
The other thing as well, like we're in a bit of an arms race going on here between like ChatGPT, Claude, and open source. Surely somebody's going to run out of money on this. Like this is not sustainable. So my question, like I can understand now, Google probably got the advantage, and so in essence, because they've got mega deep pockets, like who do you think is going to? I was going to say who's going to think to win. Who's going to run out of gas? Do you think on this?
I think everybody was shocked. I think how flat-footed Google was. They have the whole internet indexed already, ready to search. It feels like that's a real easy transition to an LLM. So I think that they've closed the arms race isn't surprising anybody with the pockets and the data already there. Who's going to run out first? It's kind of hard to guess. Like ChatGPT was the first one out there, right? Has the staying power. I think has a lot of brand recognition. Anthropic seems to be being picked up a lot by enterprises lately as like I think, not to bash Copilot or anything, but I think Anthropic is paving the way for a lot of features that find themselves in other tools.
Yes, well, and also
Copilot, Gemini.
Anthropic also seems to be winning like the US government defense contracts as well.
Right. Yeah. So it seems enterprises are kind of favoring that more. So I don't know if ChatGPT, I've heard Anthropic is changing their pricing scheme. So a lot of people are looking at Codex now more seriously, and I'm hearing the latest Codex model, they're starting to look more. It's hard to pick one. I don't know anybody who would tell me that their favorite model is Gemini, but kind of like you hinted at, they have the deepest pockets probably. So
okay, so
the staying power might be there.
Yeah. Also, wait a second here, like the three of us. Well, both you, Alex, and me are MVPs. Carl, you're like a Microsoft dude. So the three of us are Microsoft people. We're very much in the Microsoft silo ecosystem. It's a bit like, I think if you saw I go to a Google shop firm, again, they will be sort of like more on the Gemini train. Okay, but the fact that we're very much our customer, like nobody really calls us up. SoHo Dragon says, "Oh, can you do a Google migration?" Because that's not what we promote, and we don't have that skill set. And then therefore, those are conversations, side conversations, I just don't have. Like Alex, you work for Lean Technologies. Just quick plug about what do they do?
Yeah, so we do all sorts of technology, digital transformations, product coaching, all that sort of stuff. So we will build custom software, help teach you how to be more productive, or better DORA metrics or throughput in your system, and help you figure out what might be clogging your system if you're trying to figure out how to get stuff. We also do consulting at work as well, so we can also train you, or we can even partner with your teams to build. Specifically, I do generative AI work there. So I'm helping partner with an organization right now on how to adopt generative AI. I tell people I feel like my day job is a lot of times raining on people's parade. I have to tell them, like, 3 if statements would satisfy this and never be wrong. So while Gen AI is cool and fun and we would like to use it, it really might just be better suited for 3 if statements that are going to always run and be much cheaper and easier to maintain. So
right.
We are an Azure partner. We're an AWS partner. That's kind of where we don't do a ton in GCP, but even like our business people are the big Claude Anthropic power users. So like we have the Google Suite for all of our apps and stuff. Gemini is enabled by default on a lot of it. Even a lot of our business people are like, I want to use Anthropic. I want Claude Desktop. I want all this. I don't hear anybody even in our case saying like, oh, hey, give me Gemini. Let's do Gemini. But to your point, if you have we're blue bloods for Microsoft, if you have somebody who's the big true Google person, they'd probably tell you how great Gemini is and how it could go toe to toe with everybody.
Well, it's like the religions. I'm sure if you ask the Pope, what's the best religion?
Do you find you mentioned custom software? I've heard people saying like, hey, custom software is tough, like historically, because you have to maintain it and there's a cost associated to keeping it up to date. But hey, now with vibe coding and with AI tools, like it opens the door to maybe, be able to, for enterprises to go down that path of custom software and build something that's really tailored to their business more easily. I'm just curious, are you seeing that trend in your work at Lean Techniques?
We're seeing that teams that truly bring it in and use it as a pair or work with the models or put in governance are seeing true productivity increases. There's better throughput. You don't have to toil as much for the simpler tasks, right? And then you can focus on the part that's actually hard about your job. I think with any tool, there's always a curve of adoption, right? Like the senior people who are super set in their ways are sometimes a little bit less willing or likely to adopt it because they haven't truly seen the pieces that really get to the point where it helps you. I think Microsoft put out a thing, and it was towards the start of 25, I think, where they called it the Frontier Firm.
Yeah.
It was like their work index. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, there's a graphic in there specifically where they show basically like humans are going to be augmented or have their own assistant. Then it's going to be, we're going to be delegating work to assistants, like a couple. And then it's like, oh, hey, we're humans delegating full tasks to assistants. I think AI is just getting to the point where that third tier is possible. I'm seeing with like multi-agent systems, and you can, get work trees and power that so you can delegate multiple tasks all at once and go and basically have AI do the work for you. I think we're just starting to get there, but there's still the fear or the uncertainty people have of like, wait, there's code that could go to production that I didn't necessarily write. Because you also have people on the other end of the spectrum of they'll push bad code and be like, I didn't write it. That was AI. Be like, well, the area of responsibility is still on you.
I heard a statistic earlier this week. Apparently 35% of AI projects get sabotaged by their employees.
Yeah, I can see that.
Fear it's going to take their jobs, okay, or it's not as good. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I think it was Gardner, somebody put out that like 90% of AI projects fail just in general. And I think it's kind of along the lines of what I was hinting at earlier, right? If you use AI for AI's sake, like with the 3 if statements, that's a really trivial example. But if you're just using AI for the sake of AI, your project's probably going to fail because the value isn't there. What you really need to do is figure out what the real problem is and how can we solve it, and maybe AI unlock an avenue to solving that didn't exist 6 to 12 months ago. Because I think that's where it really shines, right? Because then you're not doing a project for AI's sake. There's a pain point, there's a value add, there's a true ROI there. And then you can compare it against, well, we're going to use AI for this. Cool, how do we do that? And I think that's the piece that in a lot of people's equations are missing, right? Everybody builds their first RAG system, retrieval augmented generation, where they can chat with company documents. And then a lot of people kind of just stop because they're like, oh, I don't really know. I don't know how to get past the point of building a one concierge agent or just a knowledge source thing. Or maybe they try to apply it to a task or a process they already have and understand. But it's like, you already had the task good and working. You don't need to introduce AI, and then people just kind of don't use the AI piece because it's more cumbersome or different and doesn't give them any more return on their time, their value, any of that. So I think that's why a lot of projects we're seeing die and sizzle out, because it's somebody's passion project to throw AI into the mix, and then their processes and procedures beforehand were just more efficient.
Well, also, well, we need to have AI in it. Yeah, how often do we got this project? We must have AI involved in something. Okay,
right.
Even if it's just in the title of the document, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's also like it's a very exciting tech, but there's a lot like to do it well. There's a lot of unglorious work that needs to be done. You mentioned RAG a minute ago, but like just that's like the simple thing that everyone always talks about, just like making sure your data is correct, that it's up to date. That can be extremely time consuming, and it really has nothing to do with AI. Like when you think about it at its core, it's just like making sure that you have the right data. And then also there's a bit of a like rallying people sometimes, like if you're piloting a project, to have the right kind of champions in an org that are looking for the right problems to solve, and kind of if you want, like evangelize the improvements that AI can bring. I think is a big part of it as well, that sometimes fails.
I think it's hard too, because you're asking people to solve problems that they maybe never have thought of as solvable problems either, right? Like there's this whole like another level of thinking, because it's, oh, hey, what if we could have some sort of like the closest thing we've had to this before is a rules engine. We say, hey, based on a deterministic thing that is always given to us, here's the 6 options I have, or whatever, right? And it's like, well, what if we don't necessarily have to define every rule, and we could grab different information from different things we already have built and then just tell it to figure it out? And that can be super scary from a data security standpoint. It could be kind of hard to even think about if you don't understand how AI works, of like, so you're telling me my systems I have today can automatically be webbed together without having to worry about building some crazy integration layer, and the AI is just going to do that and answer the questions. It's like, yeah, it can do that. And then people are like, I don't buy it. And I think that's where there's a disconnect of, some people just think it might be too good to be true. Some people are just fearful from it. Some people just don't understand all the different tools at our disposal. And it doesn't help that, what's the joke? OpenAI puts out a new model and like 20 startups just died overnight. And it's the same with all the model providers, right? Like it's at such a clip that if this isn't your hobby or what you really enjoy to look and think about, like you just get left in the dust because it's just coming out at such a fast rate. And then you have people like, I don't know, Copilot and Anthropic both are talking about price increases, right? Of switching to token-based billing and all that. I think some people are looking at that as a victory cry of like, look, I was right. Like you were eating somebody's free lunch and now the roost is coming home. I'm glad I didn't do that. You talked about which company is going to go under first. I think some people are looking at that as like, hey, they're not giving out free stuff anymore. Maybe that's a problem.
Well, it's also in any new technology, like you have a land grab, okay? So basically we're going to give it to you for free. We want to get as many users as possible, because also that's what the investors want, okay? And then when we reach a critical mass, okay, and hopefully there's sticking power, we can slowly start incrementing the price, but also we're adding more features to the product. Therefore, we can justify the price increase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, everybody uses it better and better, and you're starting to see real measurable productivity gain. I tell people too, I always joke, when I first started, Visual Studio licenses were like $5,000 a pop. So if you wanted a new developer, you knew you were paying at least $5,000 in technology fees. Now people put their nose up for $100 or $200 a month subscription. It's like, guys, you used to send people to conferences and pay $5,000 per head just to use the IDE. Now all those tools are free, and you can get productivity gains for $20, $100, $200, like for Anthropic's pricing model. And people are just like, that's too much. That's crazy. And I'm like, what shifted?
It's the reference point, the frame of reference. Like do you have a K-Cup coffee machine at home? Okay, so those pods are about sort of like 60, 70 cents, okay, each. Now, if you compare that to instant coffee, okay, it's very, very expensive, but you compare that to sort of like a Starbucks latte, okay? So basically you've got, in essence, you're basically, you're saving an absolute fortune by not going to Starbucks, okay? That's the frame of reference with the K-Cups, okay? If you have the frame of reference with instant coffee, you would say this is a complete sham, okay? So they just changed your frame of reference. On that, and it's the same with like the subscription, in terms of like going to the cinema. Okay, that even though the tickets are expensive, you deliberately lower the tickets, but you make your money elsewhere on the popcorn and the soda. Okay, on that. So basically, the night out with your spouse is still the same. Okay, but the frame of reference is the tickets are half, and the matinee is half price. Okay. However, you still, the popcorn and the sodas are still the same price. Okay. So your subscription, so the pricing model, the costs are kind of like the same, basically.
Yeah, it ends up being a wash, right? Because when you're there, you smell the popcorn, you see the candy, you see the drinks. You're like, man, really need to do that. Like you said, then you're conned into buying something with maybe more profit. I think the other thing, some people would say that AI is like going away. You brought up open source as a huge one of your 3 pillars of the people that can succeed. I think people get so caught up in the big players that they forget open source is a thing. I tell people, like, if you're not experimenting with AI because you think it's going to go away, you're completely wrong. Because even if these model shops like Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI all shut down tomorrow, there's so many ways to leverage open source models that they say are about 6 to 8 months behind what the frontier models are. Your company can go and self-host that today. There's just not a math equation that makes sense. Like, the pricing is so cheap right now. It's easier and cheaper just to pay Microsoft to do it, or Anthropic, or whomever. There could be a critical mass where, hey, it makes more sense from a financial perspective for us to host these LLMs on-prem, and while you're VPN'd in anyway, doing your work or whatever. We now own the model, and we just used, I haven't built one because one of my talks was basically like how easy it is, because Copilot itself is an open source project. Like the scaffolding and wiring, there's an open source project you can do there. So I actually wired it in with Microsoft Foundry. So I built a VS extension just through vibe coding. It took me like not even an hour to take Microsoft Foundry, take the open source Copilot, and then, okay, now I can pick any model that's easily available in Microsoft Foundry, and I can now code against it. And it has the tool calls to read files. It can make code suggestions, all that. It took me like an hour. So I'm like, if me screwing around in my free time took me an hour to do that, imagine what professionals who are tasked as that's their J job to actually do and knock out of the park. Like, I think it's only a matter of time, if costs get high enough, that like it's not going away. The ownership just might shift onto the consumer. We might just have GPUs in our offices, or just running it on our own machines.
Well, yeah, but you also got to look at not just your cost of running the business process, but look at the output. Like, hang on a minute, I don't need 5 people. I can now do a document. I can now produce a report in hours rather than days. Well, hang on a minute, that pays for itself immediately.
Yeah, there's a firm here in town that actually uses Cloud Code, and they're dabbling with some memory stuff. And what they said is basically they do their Scrum planning and then immediately dictate all of the backlog items you have for your like 1 week period to an AI agent and get work trees. And I think they said all of their work is about 80% production ready immediately. So like within not even an hour or two, their entire thing. So then they go in and just tweak it. And I think they said they saw 3x productivity gains across their developers. So it's like, those are real gains people can have and see. So then you have to ask the question of like, what is software we weren't building because it was costly, difficult, or hard to maintain? Kind of like a callback to earlier. we now have extra developer capacity to solve these problems that we maybe didn't have before because we weren't going to increase headcount for this one-off thing. Or, how do we think of projects differently? Because now I can have a developer that can go and build this. Maybe it's an internal tool, right? So it's vibe coded. It might not be the most awesome UI UX thing in the world, but to your point, if it saves somebody an hour or a few days, and it took me a day or two to put together, and you save like multiple days a week, the costs just like are super obvious, right? My time is not that valuable. If I spend a day or two on it, and then you save 2 or 3 days a week, or even 2 to 3 days a month, multiply whatever you get paid times a year, like that's the cost of savings you have. And then there's different tools and things to make it easier to run and maintain even, right? So you make a real simple, lightweight app and then go.
The IT is not going to be you have a project, someone in HR, can you do this? An IT in the past would say, this is going to be a 6-month sign project. Okay. Now, so like saying we can probably do this in a few days and get this thing live. Or the other thing as well, I can see this happening, like this whole, this is going back 30 years actually, I would go on site with a client in the morning, we'll get the requirements, which we kind of like knew. I will then code it, they'll check in at lunchtime, and then like 5 o'clock, they will say, look, okay, this is ready. We can now look at this, we'll get back to you in 2 or 3 days after we give you some feedback. So there's this offshore model of like, let's just offshore it, and then it will come back in a few days' time. Well, wait a minute, we can now do that much quicker. Okay, yeah. So therefore I can see a lot of development work coming back to the US or back closer to where the client is, okay, rather than being done in offshore in production, okay, because we can now, instead of like, I've got these requests, which it's just going to be so much back and forth, we can now just get it done like there and then.
Yeah, I do wonder what it's going to mean for ownership. Like we're talking about something that's vibe coded, but even like imagine somebody that builds a few agents in Copilot Studio, something that they would never have been able to do in the past, and then maybe a couple of other things built in Foundry, like who owns maintaining them, managing them, who owns the observability and monitoring them? Like, is that an IT problem? Is it the person that wrote it? Like, I wonder how orgs are going to have to evolve around this now that everyone is able to kind of be put on their developer hat and vibe code something that ends up in an internal tool somewhere that needs to be supported.
Okay, but hang on though, but this is the citizen developer. This is not a new conversation with whole info path, SharePoint designer, the citizen developer, Power Apps, no code solutions. And this is old wine in a new bottle here, where an organization can say, look, we're only going to support enterprise systems. You can do all this citizen development, but the moment this becomes more of a business critical application, we need to know about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the other thing with AI, like converting what exists today is so much easier. So like if it gets to the point, there was a company I worked for previously that had that same issue. One guy built out an Empower Automate flow that I think it was like 7 or 8 people ended up working with. Like it made all their jobs easier. He got a new job, got promoted or something. So it kind of went in disarray. And then they came yelling at IT when it broke. And IT's like, this isn't an enterprise app. Like you guys kind of did your own thing. So like we can try to come up with a budget, but like you own this. But I think what we're going to see is like, if they've gone through the point of building it in Power Apps now, how hard would it be for a pro code developer to say, okay, now just convert this to something we maintain. And it's just something that maybe somebody maintains as a pet project.
Yeah.
I built an application for my wife. She's a florist, to do some basic like floral inventory management stuff. Like I was playing with Copilot squads. I vibe coded that and just let it go and run off, and it deployed to Azure fine. I have a CI/CD pipeline. It's a very basic Angular app with a .NET backend that's secure. Like it took me if I wasn't playing with squads as much, the app itself probably could have been done in like a day or two. But it's like now it just sits there and runs and maintains, and it's a fancy form basically. So she doesn't have to mess with Google Sheets or Excel. So it's like, okay, how many of those simple little forms can we deploy that just make people's jobs easier? Because instead of dealing with Excel macros or anything, it's just, hey, here's a simple data entry screen that you can do what you need to do.
Well, yeah. Have you used GenSpark?
I have not.
We did a website. I did a website in that, and like no wireframes. Within an hour and a half, the whole thing was done. We spent more time looking at pictures, choosing that rather than actually that it was a personal project, but it was just like this would have taken wireframes, committees, everything. No, we'll get it live. Put the feedback on it live. Put the feedback, and we'll spend like 15. We can do the feedback instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on that. So it's all about speed. Alex, what do you say in terms of the Foundry models? What's the biggest challenge you're seeing with organizations?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now, I think a lot of people have just fear of getting started, right? Like I've heard the phrase in a lot of organizations, we don't want to open the AI floodgates. We don't want to potentially have an unexplained or unrealized bill. We don't even know how to get started, right? There's all these tools you brought on, Carl, of you start getting into Foundry and there's like all these buttons and navigations and different things that you can do in there. I think the fear to get started is what a lot of people are hesitant with right now. And I think go for it.
Yeah, do you find that you sometimes get into conversation? You said something earlier that was funny, like, hey, this can be replaced with 3 if statements and let's say Power Automate or whatever. So like, do you sometimes get into convos where it's like, I wonder like where you need to provide guidance of like, this is actually better suited for like a no code Copilot Studio solution, or this is maybe where Foundry is better, or this can just be Power Automate. Like, I wonder like how often do those kinds of decision-making conversations happen?
I'm usually in the custom app dev space. So like we have a different team at the client I'm at who really wants to own Copilot Studio. So we've tried to box those in a way that it's easier. We've decided for that organization, I believe it was like under 5 users is more of a Copilot Studio, Copilot Lite kind of thing. Anything above that we say is more of a Foundry, like enterprise managed thing, especially if you want it in like integrated in one of their custom apps, right? So the sweet spot for Copilot Studio we've said is like under 5 people. You want to deploy it to potentially in Teams or Copilot Chat, Microsoft Chat. I forget what they call it now. It's changed its name a bunch, but 365 Chat.
365 Chat.
That's kind of the sweet spot they've come up with. I've created a flow chart before of like which is AI the right solution for what you have, and then which one to stop at. I can send you a link to that, but it's mostly like, hey, how do you first, like, are you okay with a non-deterministic system? Like, are you okay with a variance in your answers? If the answer is no, like AI is just flat out not good for your solution. There's ways we can reduce the hallucinations and not deterministic piece of it, but we can never guarantee it. And if you need guarantee, AI is probably not great for you. And I think that's kind of where we drive people. Like, try to go in with your eyes wide open too. There's going to be some variation here. How do we allow for that to happen? What's your exit strategy? Is it, there's one app we built where people today would call their call center, and that's their golden path today. So we try to give them manuals beforehand. And worst case scenario, they just call the call center like they do today. Best case scenario, they get the manual, get the exact help they need. And, it was more instantaneous than having to go to a call center and potentially be escalated and dealing with all that. So I think that's where there's some efficiency gains too, of like, how does it make the consumer's life easier, your customer's life easier? And does it save them time, money, or convenience?
Well, hang on, but that's the same in any technology sort of like conversation.
And that's the not fun part of it, right? Like everybody wants AI and thinks we're going to have these cool, crazy conversations. And it's really like, if you can't tell me one of those 3 things you're saving, it's more of a passion project or a toy, right? It's just, oh, we're doing it because we can. OpenClaw has kind of been that for me. I know a lot of people see OpenClaw as like a lot of fun things or productivity gains. I see it as kind of a toy right now, just because of how insecure it potentially can be and all that. I don't know enterprises are really going to be wanting to adopt that. So I haven't looked into it or done much with it because it's like, I just see this as kind of like a toy, like a home automation, like the people who would host their own home automation tools and all that. Like, that's fun if you want to do that, or, people who host their own Plex servers, right? Like, if you don't want to pay for Netflix and all that, and you're big in the data quality and high fidelity, like, yeah, Plex servers make sense, but that might be a niche thing that you like or enjoy, not necessarily applicable to the wider org or the wider companies.
Well, it's almost like, when like it's a hobby thing, like computers. I started as hobbies, hobby computer kits, and then it sort of became product support. Linux is a good example. It was very much of a hobbyist thing, and then Red Hat came out, which could provide a support environment to this, and then it became more battle hardened than the enterprise. And so that's going to be the same with the AI. With the AI, it'll be a hobby. Someone's going to come around with, it'll be more stabilized. We can support it, and you're going to have to pay for that.
And I think some people have harnesses around AI like that. Like 11 Labs is a great example, right? You don't know what model they're doing. They do voice to speech or avatar generation. It's pretty human-like for what they have. You don't care if they're using a ChatGPT model, their own model, or whatever. You're paying for it for the thing of, they make really human-like avatars, and they can, take your voice recording and generate text or audio with what you sound like. And I think that's where that's the pain point you're solving, right? Is I need an avatar for some reason. Maybe I don't want to be on video. Maybe I just need to generate one that sounds human-like. That's what it is. It's not. You're not going to the board and saying, hey, I want to use an AI audio thing. You're like, hey, we have the use case we need avatars or figureheads or voices for something. And that's your pain point. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is what's the real pain point and value you're trying to solve here? And then AI just kind of becomes a back seat. That was the technology light bulb that allowed us to do it. I think people are also more willing to try AI technologies now. I had a fun conversation the other day where we wrote a really simple document validation app that uses OCR, but the people on the AI train right now, right? Like, we're using AI. OCR has been around for 40 years. So like, it's not anything too crazy, but as far as the new wave of marketing, we're using AI because it's just traditional AI, not more of the new LLM frontier models.
Well, yeah, but this is like where, I don't know, 30 years ago. It's internet. Yeah, the application is internet, is internet ready kind of thing. Does it really matter? It's web based. Does that really add much to the solution? Or mobile enabled? Okay, yeah, the application is mobile enabled, and it'll be like a link, which is basically just to HTML rendering the code in your browser. Okay, yeah, that will be classed as an app on your phone.
The joys of hybrid apps. That's what it is, right? Build it once, it works within an app and within your phone screen. It's interesting what you were saying, Alec, about like the OCRing been around forever, but now it's just like picked up again. I feel like that's maybe one of the biggest ops for ISVs, like is just focusing on specific use cases or verticals or business cases, and kind of like making it more of a human-like experience for companies, and focusing on their custom-tailored problems more end-to-end, not just like OCRing a doc, but like looking at the whole story of like, it comes in through an email, it's an attachment, it gets scanned, it does this, it does that. I think that's where it's evolved from maybe 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. How to make that user interface, like when the internet came around, I don't know, 35 years ago, okay, it was all text based, and then the whole Mosaic browser came in, okay, and suddenly there was graphics, there was icons, it was clickable, it required no training. Okay, there was huge adoption, even like with the Apple, was it the iMac? No, what was the Apple computers in the 90s that were colored?
IMAX.
Yeah, those iMacs were like beautiful. It was like that. The whole thing about that, you just take it out of the box, plug it in, no hard drive, no floppy disk, plug it in, and then you can use it. And it was also one of these sort of like, you could put it in the living room, and it will be like it was actually a very nice aesthetic for the living room. Like prior to that, if you had you'd see go to someone's living room, which would be sort of like a pottery barn kitted out. You'd turn around and there'll be like a PC and a monitor in the corner. Why don't you just stick a filing cabinet and a fax machine and call it a place and office? It would totally ruin the aesthetics of a living room. Okay, while the Apple Mac, it made it look like, wow, it's suitable for a living room, not an office. Okay, so we'll get there with AI, where it just becomes the norm of same as WhatsApp, and texting as well. Like, where families didn't used to do that, but now everybody does all that now on the cell phones. Okay, so
now it's weird if people called you, right?
Yeah, nobody buys a cell phone to make phone calls anymore.
I think it's super interesting. I think as people understand too what the possibility of AI is, like, we're going to see more and more unique solutions, and enterprises will adopt it more and more. I think right now, a lot of companies went in on just some R&D. Let's spend a bunch of money and play with AI without a real business use case. I think that's why the numbers of failed projects are potentially maybe a little bit higher than they really are, because they were just projects for the sake of projects, or maybe for the sake of learning. As we continue to find real use cases and see real returns, and companies mix and mingle and tell each other how they're using AI, I think we'll see a lot more systems, and we'll see what's the right interface to. Like, I just called a HVAC company the other day, and it was an AI agent on the other end, and they didn't tell me it was, and they had fake office noise in there, and it was like fake typing on a keyboard, and I'm just like, the uncanny valley was super strong. And I'm like, this is an AI. And then I hung up, and I got a text immediately afterwards from the same person, but they said it was an AI assistant at that point. And I was like, this is annoying. Like,
it's also a bit inauthentic. It's like if you looked at a website and you wanted to go to a hospital, and you looked at the website and you saw a very big hospital building, and you turned up and it was sort of like an industrial estate in porta cabins. You might say, well, what's going on here? Your website's different, it's almost like you go to someone's website and you've got some great picture of the Empire State Building, and you're thinking, but you're based in Piscataway in New Jersey here. What's going on? It doesn't add up.
Right. It's definitely that way. And I think part of it is we just don't know how AI fits into our everyday systems either, right? Like, that's something we're going to trial and error probably a little bit and figure out. The AI models get better and better, so they get more capable every day, or every little bit. So I think the world is our oyster at this point. The only thing I tell people is get to experimenting, because like you said, with open source being around, like, even if all of these companies went defunct tomorrow, ChatGPT, Anthropic, Google, we still have open source models to do what we could do 6 to 12 months ago. So you could run it on your own hardware. So if there's just a fundamental thing of, hey, we're now unlocked to solve this problem that the enterprise never could solve before, you have your open source models like Whisper, you have Quinn models, you have DeepSeek, you have other models that are out there coming out that you can use. I'd say just get to experimenting, and I think we'll see what's in favor for everybody, but I think it's only getting more and more exciting.
All right, we'll wrap up on this. Alex, thanks very much. Where can people find you? Are you a bit of a blogger? You got Twitter, LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I also blog at eitl.ai, so engineeringtheloop.ai. I have a podcast there that we've been on hiatus that I'm going to revive here pretty soon. That we just kind of have similar conversations with people of, what are they doing in technology? I like to showcase the individual's journey of, where'd you start from? How'd you get into tech, and how'd you get to where you are today is kind of the big format we follow. And then I'm planning on doing more tutorial-esque stuff in there too. So if you want to learn more about Foundry or watch any of my talks on like Foundry Local, check it out there.
Okay. All right, Alex, thank you for your time. And Cole, always good to have you co-host as well. And a good entertaining chat. This will be pushed out on the usual social media platforms, LinkedIn, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy the day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.